Hey everyone, I'm Matt, Storm Guy, Eric, CB. You guys hear me? Hi Russell. What's up? So I don't have any agenda for this. This is just a chance to hang out, chat a little bit, answer some questions if you have some questions. Except for I'm not answering any questions from Matt Cook, Oregon, because he's just a thorn in my side. Matt, the first million felt pretty good. The second million, even better. Hello, Michael Milton. Hey, Aaron. Hello, no one. I'm glad to see that no one's here. Hey, Zach. Hey, Jeff. Hello, David. Hey, George. Okay, 2017 Forester 2.5i. Tires for sure if you're looking to get out on the trail. The lift has been useful also. I mean, lift and tires, I think those are the main things to get you capable out on the trail. And then really the rest of it is just stuff to make your life better. Those are rolling up faster than I can keep track of them. I might not manage to say hi to all of you, but I'm going to try. Hey, birdfish. How many miles on the Subaru so far? I'm at about 71,000 miles on the Forester. The rear sway bar removed, Chris. That I did that at the same time as putting on the King springs, which are quite a bit stiffer, and I think that the springs compensate quite a bit for the lack of the sway bar. I have not noticed, I haven't noticed a difference on the road as far as it being harder to handle or anything. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell on the trail because, um, without doing just a side by side comparison, driving a stretch of trail with the sway bar and without the sway bar, it's really hard to know exactly how much difference it's making. The thing is, most of the time the Forester would get up pretty much anything I would point it at, so it's hard to tell for the moment just how much difference it's making, but it's got to be doing something because the articulation is improved and the tires stay on the ground better than they were. Eric, Andy, Jerry. How do you feel about all the Overland YouTube channels moving towards being all about advertising gear? Well, that's it. Sort of goes with the territory. I advertise gear too. Um, Running a channel like this and getting out and shooting content and putting it all together, it takes a lot of hours. And most of us can't just work for free. There is some revenue that comes from YouTube, but it doesn't come close to compensating for the hours that I put into it. So, I mean, I understand any YouTuber doing what they can to monetize their channel and get something back for the work that they're doing. Now, hopefully, people would try to at least do stuff that's relevant. And, I try to present on my channel, I try to present products that are relevant to what I'm doing, what I think you guys might be interested in seeing, and which I think are actually good products, or which I hope will be good products. Um, So I'm not going to criticize anyone for doing some product stuff on their channel. It's really hard not to. What vehicle would you have if not the Subaru? That's a that's a sensitive question because a lot of people are here because of the Subaru, and that's way down the road. I mean, I think that ultimately, if I wasn't driving a Subaru, I would like to have something that was actually four-wheel drive, something with a low range gearing. Um, but I haven't. I plan on driving the Forester for a lot longer. I've had it for 3.5 years. I usually keep vehicles for about 10 years. And so I've got a long ways to go with this car. And so, I see things that, oh, that'd be nice, that'd be nice. But, really until I'm at that point where I'm ready to actually make a switch, it's hard to know because what I think I like today is different than what I thought I liked a year ago. And in 2 years from now, may not be what interests me. So, hi, Mike from Central California. Torque lockers. It's still a possibility. There is. It may be in the works. It's been sort of a long process, but I'm interested in having one on the Forester. I'm really curious to see how that would change things in some of the spots that where I do run into trouble, like you actually saw in the last video. I think I probably could have got up that hill if I had the torque locker. That may still be something that's coming. Hello, Doug's fan, Michael Gross, Ontario, Oregon. Russell Miller, did you ever get the water container situation sorted out? Well, so yes and no. I mean, basically, I took out all of my automated, or not automated, but flowing water kind of stuff. I really, really wanted to have running water, and it was nice when I had it, but it's just been one headache after another. And the week-long trip with Jason, I just threw a bunch of 1 gallon jugs of water in the car, and you know what? It was okay. It really wasn't that bad. It used to bug me having all of those jugs of water rolling around in the car, but um, it was fine. It was easy, and you never had to worry about like one single container failing and then losing all of your water. At worst, you could lose 1 gallon of water if something broke. So I do have a few ideas for a simplified water delivery system that I may look at in the future, but it's a low priority at this point. There's a bunch of other stuff I'd really like to get done, and so I'll probably just keep carrying around 1 gallon jugs for a while. Hi, Dennis. Eric, do you have another daily car? No, the Forester is my only car. So it's my daily driver, it's my adventure mobile, and that's part of why I wanted a Subaru, is that I needed something that would be a reasonable, sort of family car for getting my kids around, for getting me around town. It doesn't consume a ton of gas, but that I could still go out adventuring. Chuck, how much fuel did it take you to do the Bend to Alvord? Ooh, that's a good question. So I drove from Eugene to Bend. That usually takes me a little more than a. Oh, that's going to be a tough one to answer because I never like fully emptied the tank. I would top up when I had chances to top up. So I filled up in Bend, filled up at Christmas Valley. It was probably three. I'll have to go back and like calculate it out. I would say three. I would guess three solid tanks of gas. That would be 15, 30, 45 gallons of gas. So you can do the math on whatever the gas costs. But it ultimately, and I actually talk about gas consumption in the video that's coming out this coming weekend. Um, but we weren't always doing a ton of miles every single day, and it was a lot of slow driving. And so uh, I went from like I filled up in Bend, and then went from like Monday afternoon in Bend when I filled up before meeting Jason, and it wasn't until like Thursday afternoon that I went and filled my tank up again. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, almost 4 days of messing around out in the desert, and I still hadn't even gone through 3/4 of a tank of gas. So the Forester does really good on gas. Uh, Texas Dual Sport. Moved to Oregon from Texas long ago. My question: have you ever thought about going out to Texas or other states? Oh, absolutely. I would love to get beyond Oregon. In fact, that's one of the things I'm really hoping for 2021 is to really get beyond Oregon at least a couple of times. There's a ton of Oregon that I haven't been to yet, and a lot of places that I still want to go. But there's so much to see in all the western states. I'd like to get down to Utah, California, Idaho, up in Washington. Those are probably like initial like out of state places that I would go. Eventually, if this can become something that I could do more full time and not rely on sitting in front of my computer to for my day job, then pushing even beyond the west into Texas and even down into the southeast. I've seen some amazing stuff um, all over the country. It's not just the west that has some interesting wilderness to explore. So eventually, I would love to. I would love to. Michael Hall from New Hampshire. How far off did the tires change the speedometer? Basically, not at all. The tires that I'm running are really only slightly larger than the stock size. They're a little larger, but my speedometer reads, when I drive by one of those radar things, and if it says I'm going 45 miles an hour and I look at my speedometer, it also says I'm going 45 miles an hour. So it is minuscule, if anything at all. But I'm not running the larger tires that some people put on Subarus. Hey, Christopher. Michael Milton, have you considered driving the TAT? TAT. Trans American something? Specify what that is. But I'd probably consider it if I could take the time. Hi, Joey. Doing a video in the Appalachian Mountains. Yeah, like I was just saying, I would love to get beyond Oregon, even beyond the West. That's probably, I gotta say, years away at this point. There's a lot of stuff that I want to see, and the reality is that, I'm fairly home based. I have to work, and I can't going even for a week is sort of is a strain on my work, and so getting to the far side of the country is something that's probably down the road if I can develop this into something that I can devote more time to. Hi, Doris from New Orleans. Hello, Steve from Prineville. Eric, do you have another car? I think I talked about that earlier, but no, the Subaru is the only car. MK, did you get new UCAs? What's a UCA? George from Southwest Idaho Overlanding says articulation is better than a locker. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I ran in on the last video, I ran into a spot where the trail was rutted and rocky. I couldn't use momentum, and even with the sway bar removed, which it was on this trip, I couldn't get enough grip. I ended up with a tire that was spinning. I feel like if I did have the locker on the back there, whichever rear wheel was sitting on the ground would have gripped and got me up the hill there. But um, yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to try the locker after having driven the Subaru for this many years without it. I'm curious to see the difference. Norse Rhino 36. Any future plans to do any trips in Northern Oregon? Yeah, Mount Hood. Yeah, absolutely. That's high on the list. And also, and honestly, I'm embarrassed that I haven't really been any further north than like Opal Creek Wilderness, sort of nothing further north than Salem. Um, but Mount Hood is it's just looks like an unbelievably gorgeous wilderness and some amazing views to be had up there. So that hopefully in 2021 I can at least get up there for 2 3 days at least and check some of that out. Hi, Michael Foster from Salem. NC Forster, you moved your front sway bar. Oh, and you've been able to feel the difference. I haven't done that yet. It was just easy to remove the rear sway bar when we were doing the springs, and so we did. But I'll keep that in mind. John, how do you balance overlanding, filming family, and scoping out new adventures? It's not easy. When I'm not out working on the car or on the trail, I'm in front of my computer doing something. Um, it's yeah, I put a lot of hours into this, and I don't really have leisure time. I'm lucky that the soft roading the West work is fun work, and I enjoy it. And my day job even is not terrible either, and so it's work that I mostly enjoy also. But I I don't know that balance is quite the word that I would use for what I have at the moment. I'm just working a lot right now. Hopefully, I can get everything to a point where I can take a little bit more of a breath. Graduate material. Eric. So, Eric, are you not hearing my answers? I think I've answered this question a couple of times. I daily drive the Forester. It's the only car I have. Are you guys able to hear me? Talus, have you ever heard of someone downgrading to a manual handbrake? Oh, I've not heard of that, but I totally understand. I am not a fan of the push button parking brakes. That just seems, I don't like that at all. I feel like you want to have something that you can apply, even if the car isn't running. That's the problem with the electric parking brakes or um, emergency brakes or whatever you want to call it, is that you know what if your car is not able to run, can, or the battery's completely dead or something happens, and your last ditch resort is to grab that handbrake and stop your car, and instead you've got a button, and then you like wait for the computer to kick it in. I don't like those at all. If I ever ended up with a, well, I would try not to end up with a vehicle that had an electric parking brake, but if I did, I would totally be interested in changing it back to a manual handbrake also. Hey Jared, Backroad Exploration. When's the Subaru sponsorship start? I'm not sure that Subaru really likes me. I don't know. I'm sort of tearing their car apart um, yeah, I don't think Subaru's ever really going to get behind me. Nathan, you came from an XJ Cherokee to a Subaru, I take it? Gain 10 miles per gallon? Yeah, I understand. Talus, yes, import an Australian dual range transmission. I've definitely thought about it. I'm not positive that it's worth the expense and trouble, um, given that for the moment, even though I would love to have dual range in my Forester, it still mostly gets every place I want it to go, just with the automatic transmission and the traction control. So that's it's a question of how much would I gain and how often would I actually get to use that low range transmission for all of the expense that it would take to get a transmission over here and tear the car apart and put a different transmission in. I don't know. I feel like you get to a certain point where it just makes more sense to give up and get into a different vehicle. Now, there's also a part of me that's really interested in seeing how absolutely far I can push the Forester. And so that could possibly mean a dual range transmission eventually. It's, believe me, it's something that I've been thinking about for a couple of years. Peak Beggar, hello from Europe. Are in a happy place in terms of work-life balance? Um, no, well, no, because I still pretty much work all of my waking hours. I mean, some of it is soft roading the West work, and more of it is, but which is fun work. But I still mostly work all the time, and it would be nice not to. NC Force, did you color grade your videos? Yes, yeah, everything gets. I actually spend a lot of time color grading. Sometimes the way they turn out depends on the lighting. At the time, the first episode, we had a lot of really heavy overcast, dull lighting, and so I do what I can to try and recover some image from all of that, but it doesn't always look as beautiful as it does with a perfect sunny day. But yeah, I one of the steps, it's actually the final step of editing after I've done everything else. I've got all the edit together and I've got all the audio tweaked. Is I go through and color grade every single clip gets specific attention. Jeep Tracks, I wish you would get out and do more videos. So do I. I wish I could do it more too. Um, but the realities of life. Eric, Eric, do you not hear me? I've answered your question like 4 times. I only have the Forester. Thanks for coming by, no one. Ashton from Ottawa, Canada. How is the reliability? Excuse me. How has the reliability been on the Forester? Have you had to do any major maintenance besides normal wear, tear, oil changes? No, it's been 100% reliable. It's never broken down on me. I've not had to do anything other than oil changes, tire rotations. I possibly change the air filter a little more often than I would otherwise, but it's been fine. The car only has 70,000 miles on it at the moment, so I mean it's relatively young, at least as far as cars that I've owned. It's a fairly low mileage car. I expect that as we push up into 80, 90, 100,000 miles, things are going to start to go. It's just inevitable. Some stuff just alternators and axle boots and stuff starts to go eventually. But there's been nothing out of the ordinary on the Forester, and that's been the case for all of my Subarus. They've all been very reliable and not breaking down and leaving me stranded any place. Russell, what about a large water container in the roof rack with gravity pulling it down for you via a hose valve? Yeah, if I do another water system, it's going to be something along those lines. I'm done with pumps and I'm done with pressure. It's going to be gravity or nothing. So yeah, you read my mind in that respect. That is, if I do something, it's going to be something along those lines. What area would be a good place to off-road at the eastern tree line for the beginner? I'm not sure what you mean by the eastern tree line. Jared says he sees me in a Forerunner someday. It's a low-range capable rig. Oh, and keep the Subaru for everything else. Yeah, I don't know if I would. If I would, a Forerunner, yeah, I would love to have. That's a great rig. Um, I don't know if I would ever go to a point where I would have two vehicles. Or if I was going to have two vehicles, I think I would have an adventure vehicle and then something that was just very, very minimal, get around town kind of thing. Um, but yeah, who knows? Scoutback Adventures. Any trips to Washington State? I hope so. There's a ton of incredible mountain beauty in Washington, just in the east and in the west. I have seen just some astonishing scenery from Washington, and I really want to get up there. I've got friends and family in Washington, people that I'd like to get up there and meet, get on the trail with, and just some amazing scenery to see. I've been focusing on Oregon because I can get there. It's easy for me to get there, and there's so much of it that it's felt premature to go beyond Oregon when there's so much that I haven't seen in Oregon. But I'm hoping this coming year and in years to come to do a lot more out of state kind of stuff. California is yeah. California is probably near the top of the list for once I get out of Oregon. Utah and Southern California. I've got a lot of friends down in Southern California, and there's a lot of places that I want to visit in Southern California. So those, I would say, Utah and Southern California. Well, Central and Southern California are probably the first places I would head off to leaving Oregon, and maybe some of Idaho also. TAT. I still need someone to tell me what the TAT is. Transatlantic Trail. Is that like from Alaska down to South America? Is that what that is? And if so, I mean, sure, eventually, if I could ever truly be a full timer, I mean, that's a major time and financial investment to undertake something like that. And, you know, is a Subaru capable of, some of the stuff I've seen in Central America and South America? I don't know. Maybe the Subaru with, a support vehicle that's like some awesome super built Land Cruiser. Chuck, you filled up in Bend, Christmas Valley, and Fields. Uh, yes. So I left Eugene on a partial tank of gas, filled up in Bend before going out to meet Jason on the trail where we broke down the first time. And then we did Monday to Thursday. Then we stopped in Christmas Valley, filled up in Christmas Valley, and yeah, and then Fields was the next stop. Yes, so Bend, Christmas Valley, and Fields, and um, none of those were complete fills. I probably had I probably only burned a little more than a quarter of a tank by the time I got to Bend. I'd only used three-quarters of a tank when I got to Christmas Valley, and then I was on fumes when I got to Fields. I guess that's a little bit of a spoiler for the video that's coming. But oh, and but then to get home, I did have to make one more. I can't get from Fields all the way to Eugene on a single tank of gas, and so I did stop in Burns to top up just so that I could drive straight through Bend and not have to stop again. I could have made it from Fields to Bend without fueling up, I think, but I just went ahead and stopped in Burns. So it was four stops for gas. Okay, where are we at here? Dirty Fly Adventures, will you do a bigger lift? I've long thought that I would do that. I wanted to bump up to the 2-inch lift, but since I put those springs on the back of the car, which has given me some more lift, I'm actually pretty happy with how the car is sitting. To get to a 2-inch lift, that's like 600-700 bucks, I think, for a lift kit from ADF or Subi Lift Oz. And then that's beyond my capability to install, so that's probably another $600 of labor to install it. um, and that's not going to gain me a whole lot over where I'm at right now. So I'm inclined to leave it alone. I kind of what I kind of like about my current setup is that it's the low budget approach to lifting. I've got the 1-inch lift, which was under $200, and a pair of springs in the back, which were also under $200. So for $400 in parts and what was maybe $400 in labor, the car is sitting almost as high as something that's on a 2-inch lift. So, I mean, I wish that I had just done the 2-inch lift to begin with, right at the beginning. There's a lot of reasons why that's better than what I have, but since it is what it is at this point, I have what I have. I'm feeling less inclined to spend money on that, and I've got other things that I'd rather spend the money on. Brian, does your Subi have lockers or limited slip? No locker. That's a possibility. Rear locker is a possibility for the future. The This generation of Subaru no longer had the limited slip differential, but it's got the traction control system, which is very effective at controlling lifted wheel spin when you get into like a diagonal wheel lift sort of situation. It's pretty effective. Ganbat Ganwold, watching from Mongolia. Thank you for watching. Overland 100, thank you. Jared, Utah better be first. It's high priority, Jared. I really want to get down there. Sly Wilcox got the hand warmer. I love that little thing. Eric, Canada. Eventually, if I can get to the point where I can really devote more time to this. I follow Venture Forward, which probably many of you do, and I've seen some of what he's visited up in Canada, and even like the sort of eastern side of Canada, and what is it, like Labrador and all of that. Just some gorgeous, gorgeous country. I'd really love to get up there and explore all of that also. That's a long ways from Oregon, and trips like that, it's such a big chunk of time that it's not something that I can take on while, I still I'm sort of chained to my job for the moment. But eventually, I would love to get all over North America, and beyond. Hello, Australia. Let's see. Okay. Landon, I have a 2011 lifted Subi, and I'm starting to get into overlanding. What got you into it? I'm in Idaho currently, but you know when I'm coming. You know, uh, it was just a slow sort of development how I started doing it. I initially was just exploring back roads and not even necessarily like off-road kind of stuff, but I just kind of started pushing further and further and found myself, excuse me, deeper and deeper into. That was before I got the Subaru. Onto more and more dirt roads and gravel roads. And so when it was time for me to get another vehicle, I was like, I want something that I can actually get up into the hills with. And even then, at that point, I didn't even know dispersed camping was a thing. I didn't know you could go and camp in the national forest just wherever you want, the way I do now. And I it was all new to me, but I just found myself so happy out there. exploring the wilderness and driving up dirt roads that, yeah, it just sort of ballooned from there. Hi Kay, are you on any Facebook Subaru page? I'm on the Mountain Roo. I'm in Mountain Roo, the Mountain Roo Facebook page. So the main one and the Oregon one, or Northwest, or whatever the regional one is for us up here. I'm not really active. I don't really like interact, but I do track what's going on those pages. Um, and I'll certainly, there's a lot of people that I need to meet up with in California whenever I get down there. I'll probably, I mean, this, I don't know when that's going to happen. I would love for it to happen in 2021. But if I do, I'll certainly work something out where some sort of meetup so that I can meet up with a whole bunch of you. Um, Kristen Jackson in Australia. Hi, Australia. Oh, you do like the DIY episodes. Okay, I always feel bad about them because I don't really know what I'm doing, and I'm embarrassed by my um, DIY skills. But it's fun. I have fun, and if nothing else, I hope that people will watch them and think to themselves, well, maybe you know that you can also try and put something together yourself instead of buying something, and probably um, do a better job than me. Find ways to do what I have done better than me. Um, Dennis, 8 gallons of water in a cooler on the roof. Well, 8 gallons is a lot. I mean, I took 6 gallons with me on the week-long trip with Jason. I did actually end up buying more water along the way because I realized I was going through it faster than I thought I was. But sorry, I gotta deal with one quick little thing here. But I would be unlikely to carry more than 8 gallons. So you just put an 8 gallon cooler on your roof and fill it with water. That's an interesting idea. That's plenty of water for most of my trips. Um, okay, S306 Imposter. If money price did not matter, what other vehicle would you use for overlanding? Um, so, I don't know. I mean, if it was really money was no matter, I don't know. Something that was four-wheel drive and something. Okay, something that I could sleep in and not have to pitch a tent. Um, Something that. Sorry, Lucy is hassling me. Um, so something that's four-wheel drive, something that I could sleep in, and really, that I think that would be the bulk of it. I would like something that is not gigantic and something that I could sleep in. I've just said that four times now because I keep getting distracted. Um, yeah, so I don't know about a four by four van. Here's the other thing. Here's the thing about something where you're in the vehicle is that what I found that I really, really, really love about the Gazelle tent is that I can stand up in it. Being able to get up in the morning and stand up and stretch and get dressed and just move around a little bit without being stooped over, that's that's a big deal. That really, really makes a difference. And so that would be a high priority for me if I was ever to get into something that's vehicle based, something that a vehicle that I could sleep in. I don't think that just a solid van that I still have to stoop over in is going to do it. It's going to have to be something that is either tall to begin with or that pops up in some way. And, you know, again, that's so far down the road that I haven't seriously looked hard at what kind of options there are along those lines. I'll just have to cross that bridge when I come to it, when I see what kind of budget I have. But for now, it's going to be the Subaru and more Subaru. Okay, where are we at here? Reed White, favorite place you have been to? That is so hard because so often I get someplace and I'm like, look at how beautiful this place is. This is my favorite place. And then I go someplace else and I'm like, oh, look at how beautiful this is. This is my favorite place. Um, that's really hard. I love being up in the Cascades. I really, really love Southeast Oregon, especially the furthest corner where you get into where there's prairies and canyons and I, I don't know. It's really hard to put a finger on that. I would say a lot of times the favorite place is where I'm at the moment because it's like I'm actually there and not in front of my desk or not at my desk in front of my computer, and so it's like, yay! Hard to put a finger on the actual favorite. FN taking an 8,000-mile road trip from Indianapolis, multiple stops in Oregon in January. Wow, that's massive. I can't even begin to imagine. Safe travels. Michael Foster, what channels do you admire for their editing skills? 4X Overland, Andrew St. Pierre White. Probably first and foremost my biggest sort of influence in terms of filmmaking, if you can call it that. I wouldn't call what I do filmmaking, but I would call what he does filmmaking. Um, um, he makes just gorgeous, gorgeous overland films, and his editing is spot on. I mentioned earlier Venture Forward, Chris Shantz of Venture Forward, another YouTuber that I really, really admire his work. I really love what he does, both his shots and his editing. Um, Huge fan. I watched all of his videos. Um, and really, there's many others. I mean, Jason Primal Outdoors does wonderful work also with his edits. And you know, I'm gonna insult somebody by not mentioning them, but um, so I'll just leave it at the big ones because they really do some gorgeous work. Lucy, I'm working my way down through the questions as they come. Oh my gosh. Okay. Russell. Oh, Russell Fogg is talking to Russell Miller. Okay. OM61, OM617 Yoda. I put sideways tires on my Forester. It didn't make any difference in the spawn number. Yeah. Overland 100. What's your full time job? I am self employed, and I actually sort of do a number of different things. Graphic design is my primary thing that I do. I do a lot of work in the healthcare industry, just producing marketing materials and marketing communications in the healthcare industry. I also work in the stock photography industry. I used to produce stock photography. I don't do that so much anymore as it just isn't as lucrative as it used to be, but I do still work in the industry for one of the major stock photography agencies, and I do sort of quality control, legal vetting of photographer submissions. So those two things, plus now soft-roading the West is a piece of how I'm making my living. So hopefully it can keep growing and becoming more and more of how I make my living, and I can spend more time doing it. Who or what inspired you to start overlanding? It was really totally accidental. It just evolved, and I didn't really know. I didn't know about overlanding. I didn't even know about dispersed camping. I was just exploring further and further into the wilderness with the forester, and it just sort of happened. There was no specific inspiration. The wilderness was the inspiration. I just wanted to go out there and see more of it. Michael, Trans-American Trail. Oh, so that goes from coast to coast, from like the west coast to the east coast. Oh, that would be fun. Oh, I would feel like I could tackle that in the Subaru. The Alaska to South America thing, I would be wary of, but crossing the country, I would love to do that. That would be amazing. Although, I have to admit that I feel like I would I would be inclined to want to plot my own course and not follow an established trail. I would have to look at what the Transamerica. I'm really not familiar with it. I'd have to look at it and see where it goes and what it does. It may be that if I were to plot my own course, it would pretty much be that anyway. So yeah, I'll have to take a closer look at that and keep that in mind for. I mean, that's super long term. That would be years away, I think. Unless something really magical happens. But I would love to get across the country and get down through other states that aren't the 10 or 11 states in the West. Okay, let me catch up here. Sorry. So I have a hard time reading the questions on my iPad, and so I've got my computer running next door here, and I'm reading the chat on my computer. How long have we been at it here? Ooh, 50 minutes already. Wait, sorry, I lost my place. Can't hear me very well? Is the audio not good? Let me know how the audio is. It's just my iPad that's, I don't have a specific setup for doing this, so I'm just running the iPad. I'm sorry if the audio is not very good. I'll try to speak up. The problem with the East Coast is a lot of there is privately owned. Yeah, yeah. There's pockets of national forest though. I mean, I've seen. I think one would just have to sort of, you know, stepping stones, national forest. Um, yeah. 2013 Outback is a great adventure car. That's a fantastic adventure car. I mean, that's essentially the same as my Forester, only bigger. It's the same systems, probably the same engine. It's the same all-wheel drive, same ground clearance. Um, my friend Bruce, the channel Brucey, his Outback is around that era, I think, and he goes anywhere he wants to with that thing. Colorado has an awesome Subaru community. Yeah, Colorado. I'm sorry, I keep failing to mention Colorado. Colorado is high on the list also. Some of those trails I've seen up through the mountains, up above the tree line, 11, 12, 13,000 feet. Oh man, that is some amazing stuff in Colorado. Um, yeah, Colorado probably won't happen in 2021, but it's definitely going to happen someday. Brant Daniels, what's the bathroom situation when overlanding? Um, okay, Lucy. So, all right, Lucy, I'm not seeing you in the chat. If you're in the chat, somehow I'm not seeing you. But thanks for watching, and have a good time with your dance class, and see you in a couple of days. All right. Okay, so we were talking about bathroom situation. So, well, you're in nature, and for the most part, I assume you're talking about the more difficult part of that, and it generally involves uh, digging a hole. Um, so that's one of the many useful purposes of a shovel. Once you get used to doing that, it's not that bad. Um, I personally prefer it to some of the pit toilets that are in campgrounds. Um, there are places where it's not possible to dig a hole and bury your business, or there's just zero privacy. There's various situations. I carry a 5 gallon bucket and special bags that are made for that purpose, and so I can take care of business where I need to when I need to if it becomes necessary. Um, Most of us do, when the opportunity presents, especially if you're traveling with other people. If there's when you run across the restroom someplace, we take advantage. But otherwise, it's a little walk in the woods with the shovel. What does your family think about your YouTube channel and popularity? Well, I don't know. Lucy likes it. Lucy likes to show up on YouTube. Um, my family's been very supportive of it, very supportive actually, and yeah, I mean, I think it's a surprise. It's as much of a surprise for all of them as it is for me. This is totally, totally nothing I ever saw myself doing. And even 3 years ago, if you told me I'd be sitting here live on YouTube talking to a bunch of people all the way around the world, I would be like, uh-uh. Um, but the family has been supportive, and I think that they've seen that it's something that has just resonated with me in my life more than anything else has in my life. I just have found myself in a place where I am happier than I've ever been. And so, what family member is not going to be happy to see that? Jesus copied my super strut rack system. Oh, good. Yeah, I'm still happy with mine. I've got some changes in mind, some things I need to work out, and I won't go into too much detail there. But when I make some changes, it's going to be super strut again because it has been fantastic. I love working with it. Hello, Justin from Australia. Oh, an Aussie living in BC, Canada. Thanks for watching. Oh, Jeff, you built the awning. Oh, good. I still actually use that. I have a real awning now, but I still actually use the DIY awning more than I use the real awning. Eric, any armor on the Forester? So I've got a skid plate that I made myself. Um, and I will actually I'll have a video about skid plates coming out probably in a month or so. Yeah, probably in about a month. I'll be talking about skid plates. I do have something on the car right now, but I'm going to be making some changes here very soon. Would I do a road trip down to the Southwest? Oh yeah, absolutely. Utah is high on my list. Arizona also, New Mexico, Colorado, Southern California, even Nevada. I mean, Nevada has some really interesting areas also that I would like to see. I love all of that stuff. Yeah, that's not a question of if, it's a question of when, and hopefully Southwest this coming year. Slow L locking center diff mod. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I have a pressing need for it. If the car gets to a point where it's not getting me where I need it to go, but I try to do things when I truly see a need for them. I think before I would do that, I would do the torque locker and then see how things go. Electrics too. Thank you. Nathan, do you have any general principles that influence how you pack, what you pack, how you choose gear to maximize efficiency and make your trips as much fun as possible? Well, in the forest, the forester is small, and if you've maybe seen in some of my videos, especially when one or both of the kids come along, it gets really, really packed, really, really fast. So it's essentials. It's nothing but essentials. Um, and the other thing is to look for ways that stuff that you bring can serve two purposes. And can I pull an example off the top of my head right now? Um, I carry a 5 gallon bucket that serves a number of purposes. It can be a seat, it can be a toilet, it can be, it can catch wastewater if I'm washing dishes, it can be an emergency bucket, if there's a fire. Um, I've got a number of things that I carry that serve a couple of purposes, and I would always just look for ways to double have gear that can serve can do more than one thing. Jeff W. Hello from Southern California. How do you like your King Springs? I love the King Springs. I should not have waited so long to do that. I should have done it years ago. They are fantastic, and I'm really glad I did the Kings instead of Raleigh Tech. I was slightly worried that the Kings would be too stiff. There's Raleigh Tech springs and King springs that you can get for Subarus, and the Raleigh Tech springs are, as I understand, they're not quite as stiff. And I think for a lot of people, that actually makes more sense. It is an improvement over the stock springs, but but it doesn't stiffen the ride as much. But for me, with how loaded my Forester is, when I'm all packed up and I've got water and I've got gas and everything is in there, I'm really glad I went with the King Springs. The car sits the way it should sit. It feels much, much better on the road, and it doesn't squish down and hit the ground on every big bump. No, the King Springs, fantastic. I did not replace still the stock struts. This is still a budget operation, and so I wanted to see what I could accomplish just by putting the two springs on the back, and I'm really, really happy with the value that I got out of that. Victor, latest videos, how much better the latest videos were? You upgrade to a new camera. So I changed cameras in, was it May? August. No, it was in August. Um, Ultimately, I think that the camera hasn't necessarily made a huge difference in the videos. I think it's more just what I'm doing and how I'm handling the editing. It's just, I keep trying to get better at what I do, both in getting shots and in the editing process. And, the camera catches the footage. I feel like the new camera, which is a Sony A6600, isn't necessarily capturing footage that's significantly better than my Fuji X Pro 2 was doing before. Um, I think it's more what I'm doing with it afterwards. And hopefully, even though I won't be changing cameras again anytime soon, you'll continue to see an improvement. I hope. I'm going to try. Hi, Carol. Thanks for tuning into the live. I understand you got to go to the Zoom meeting now. Thanks for stopping by. Dirtfly, when will you be able to do full time? Well, that depends on, you know, I've YouTube has got to get a lot bigger than what it is now, for it to support me and everyone else that I'm supporting. So, um, uh, the goal would be to be able to do this full time, and because I just there's no way I can get to all of these places that everyone's talking about: Transamerica Trail, Texas, Appalachia, you know, without being able to take big blocks of time to get across the country. And so I hope I can get there. Do you have an Amazon store where you link the products you like? I don't. I think I should. I need to look into setting that up. I just, in every video, I put Amazon links to the products that are seen in that video. So you can find all the stuff that I'm using for the most part. But I think the Amazon store, I haven't looked into how that works, but I know other people have done that. And I think that would be useful. Zach, question: recommendation for an inexpensive video drone? Well, yeah, I mean, what I'm using is I'm just using a Spark, a DJI Spark, and I bought it used off eBay, and that is very, very affordable. Plus, if you lose one, like I did, it's not catastrophic as spending $1,000 on a drone. Um, and if you've been happy with the drone footage, not in this series, but like in the Eastern Oregon series, any of that drone footage was shot just on a DJI Spark. And so that's just, it's just a 1080, 30 frames per second drone. And the, the features are limited compared to some of the nicer DJIs, but it's very affordable and it does a nice job. And I mean, it's definitely better than not having aerial footage at all. That would be my recommendation. Okay, well, how far back are you guys? No, not too far back. Okay. What's your favorite drink? um, I'm a bourbon drinker for the most part. I mean, if you were talking about drinks, um, my first drink of choice would be just straight bourbon. Um, but I'm also a fan of decent red wine. Thank you. And in beer, I like really bitter, hoppy IPAs or really deep, thick stouts. Those are my two favorite sorts of beer. Does your Forester have the oil consumption issue? Yes. Now, it's not terrible. Um, it really only happens when I'm driving um, high speed for long periods of time. So, like, if I were to get on the freeway and drive from here to San Francisco, just going 75, 80 miles an hour all day long, and then turn around and drive back. If I were to do about 1,000 miles with that kind of driving, it would go right through a quart of oil. If I do 1,000 miles driving around town, driving 60 miles an hour up into the mountains, and then driving around for a couple of days on trails, and then driving home, I can do 1,000 miles without any oil consumption. So the type of driving really seems to be what makes the difference with my Forester. And I don't know if other people have had that same experience or if they just haven't been able to perceive that because most people do a much more sort of mixed sort of driving. I have no commute, I work from home, and so my car sits most of the time, and so I can really I can see and I'm aware of the oil consumption issue, and so I'm watching it constantly. So I've been able to see that it's the high speed drives, it's the prolonged high speed drives where it starts just blowing through the oil. So for me, it's I mean I don't do that very often. It's rare, and so the oil has not truly been a problem. I carry a couple of extra quarts of oil in the car all the time, and when I do take road trips, I'm extra diligent about checking it, even daily. If you're doing, doing 500 miles every single day, check the oil every single day because it'll go right through it, and you don't want to take any chances with it. Um, but it's not been a huge problem for me the way I drive my car. Overland 100. Is Jason just as he appears in his videos? Um, well, let's see. Think Jason's gonna watch this video? We're an hour in. Probably not. I bet he won't watch this. So, no, he's not. Um, he is. He is. I don't know. I don't want to like. I don't want to like ruin his. Jason is awesome. Jason, I really love hanging out with Jason. He's hilarious. He's very funny. When you hang out with him in person, me anyway. He's got me laughing constantly. I'm just laughing all the time. Um, he has a sense of humor that I think that is not apparent in his videos. But he's been doing it for a long time, and he's got sort of a persona developed. And I mean, the other thing that happens is, even on this trip, when we were hanging out together, and Jason had me laughing all the time. That's very difficult. It was very difficult to capture, and you won't really see it in my videos because as soon as the camera comes in, as soon as the camera comes on, it's hard. I mean, even for me, it's hard to just be 100% totally natural. You Something sort of switches over, and people are watching you, and it's just not the same. So uh, what I would say is, if you want to know what Jason's like, you have to become one of his Patreon supporters, and then go to his one of his annual Patreon meetups, because I'm sure that those people who go to those meetups get to see what a hoot he is. Knight Rider 21. Knight Rider, that was one of my favorite shows when I was a kid. Would you suggest wheels and tires as a first upgrade to my vehicle? Um, Tires for sure. I mean, if you need to do wheels in order to get the tires on, yeah. But that is probably, I mean, I don't know what vehicle you have, but that's probably the single most impactful mod that I made to the Forester, is that all-terrain tires made a huge difference. And tires would definitely be my recommendation for the first thing to do. Yeah. Jeremy, do you ever consider upgrading your Subaru to newer models, or just run fix your current one until it can be no longer? Um, well, part of that is a question of budget. I can't afford to upgrade to a newer model. I bought this car 3.5 years ago, and I usually manage to buy cars once every 10 years. So I've got 6.5 years to go. Um, but I'm not hugely massively interested in moving up to a newer Subaru because I'm just not impressed by the CVT. And oh, that for the people earlier saying, why isn't Subaru sponsoring you? Because because I say things like that. Um, I have no desire to drive one of the CVT Subarus, and I think that for 98% of the population, the CVT is actually just fine, and also the initial version of the CVT was more problematic than the CVT they're putting in the Subarus now. They made some changes. It's not the same CVT like that. If you follow my friend John DZ Adventuring, who burned through his CVT, that was like the first version of the CVT, and they're putting a different version of the CVT in the Subarus now, and I know many people with Subarus who are out adventuring. They're going on trails. They're getting up into the national forest, and they've got no problem. I think that the only time the CVT becomes a problem is when it's really getting pushed hard, extensively, with serious off-roading kind of stuff, which my friend John was doing with his CVT. Um, Obviously, I push my car pretty hard when the opportunity presents, and I just I don't want to go down that road. So the current Subaru, maybe the last Subaru I have, I don't know for sure, but I don't think that I would. I'm not super interested in upgrading to a newer Subaru because I'm really happy with how the four speed auto works. Exterior Gloria, all new Subarus are CVT, correct? I think there are some manuals. There's still the possibility of getting some manuals, but the 4 and 5 speed autos are gone. Yeah, any of the automatics are CVT now. Okay, just reading through. What were you and Primal Outdoors sipping on? Various forms of whiskey. Dennis Cheslock, what does your wife have to say about you overlanding? I'm not married. Adam, you still have the Spark? Yeah, I'm still running the Spark. That's what I'm using. And the current series with Jason, most of the drone footage is Jason shot with his, I think he's got the Mavic Pro 2 or some really big, nice, much nicer than me. But I'm still flying the Spark. I do have some of the footage in this series is from me, like when I was out on the dunes in the morning. That was my drone footage. And this week's video coming up on Saturday has more of my own drone footage in addition to Jason's. And I'm really happy with the Spark for how much it cost. It does a nice job. I mean, it does a nice enough job. Birdfish. Do you have a background in photography? Yeah, yeah. I have done commercial photography. Was part of how I made my living for many years. I don't do that very much anymore. Almost never. Just one or two clients that I still work with. But I've sort of evolved away from that. But I have done various types of. I've done commercial photography and portrait photography, and I produced stock photography for a lot of years. There's a lot of my images floating out there around the world, but I don't do that so much anymore. RVing McGee. I have the Yokohama Geolander AT. What did you have before the KO2s, and would you buy them again? So, before the KO2s, I was actually just running all season. I had Continental True Contact or Control Contact or something like that. It was just an all season tire, which I had on the Forester for the first year I had it. And I was actually out on the trails with those quite a bit, and they did pretty well. I really noticed the difference when I got the KO2s. Much grippier, much more sure-footed in all kinds of situations, going over dusty rocks and driving through snow. The KO2s, I really, really, really love them. I would absolutely do them again. I may um, try something else when it's time for a new set of tires, just to try something else. But the I have zero regrets on the KO2. Absolutely, they were absolutely worth every penny. Zero regrets there. I would put them on the Forester again with no hesitation. Sly of Subaru or their manufacturers were smart. They scour YouTube and pay attention to the mods. Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think that Subaru and those kind of companies have probably figured out that the percentage of people who would buy those cars is so small that it's simply not worth it to them, I guess, to offer those vehicles that are ready to go like that. It's a shame because Subaru has the ability, totally has the ability to build cars that are much more capable than what they're putting out on car lots today. You know, with put a dual range transmission. I mean, their all-wheel drive is second to none. Put a dual range transmission as an option. Build a car that's got better approach angle, better departure angle. Um, it would be something that I think a lot of people would consider. It would be a strong competitor to some of the Jeep SUVs, I think. But they've apparently determined that that's not the direction they want to go. Isaiah, I believe you're using Gaia. What overlay helps you most for understanding where you're allowed, not allowed to drive? Yes, I use Gaia, and for the most part, there's three layers that I use most. One is a satellite layer, so that when I'm out there, I can look and see what the terrain looks like at the end of that road or over that hill. And I use just the general Gaia topo to see where I'm going. And I use the public layer, the public lands layer, which is an overlay which shows you where National Forest is, where BLM is, stuff like that. That is immensely useful for knowing that you're on public land and it's fair to drive up this road, fair to camp right here in this spot because it is public land. There's a lot of places, especially in Oregon, where the public land and the private land is sort of interspersed. There's pockets of private land within the national forest, and theoretically, technically, you would not be allowed to camp on those lands. And so it's important to make sure that you're on public land. Hello, Michael from Dallas, Oregon. Eris Pope, what's your drink of choice? I answered that before. I think some of you must be lagging behind because I've seen some of these questions a couple of times. Mark Carpenter, Diodynamics 30-inch driving light bar is amazing. I imagine it is. I've already been thoroughly impressed by the teeny tiny little Diodynamics pods I have, and I've been impressed by the very inexpensive Oxbeam light bar I have. A Diodynamics 30-inch light bar must be incredible. I'd love to have them put one of those on my car. Nathan Turner, what other Subarus have you owned? So my first Subaru was a 1992 Legacy wagon. And so that was just basic. I mean, that was just family car. I bought that shortly after Colin was born, when we really needed a real family car. And I was looking at Hondas because I had owned Hondas before and had been happy with them. But I stumbled across a really good deal on this Legacy, and I liked the safety features that were built into it. And so I decided to give it a try, and I was so impressed with that car that I just kept buying Subarus from that point forward. I drove the 92 Legacy. 80,000 miles on it when I bought it, and I sold it 10 years later with 180,000 miles on it. And then I bought a 2007 Outback, and that was a great car. Also, my ex-wife is still driving it. It eventually, both those Subarus eventually had the head gasket issues, which was common with those EJ motors. Um, but they were otherwise very reliable cars, and the Outback is still my ex-wife has the Outback, and so um, I got my own Subaru basically after our divorce, and so that's the Forester. Are you still planning to do a video on your new suspension? Yes, yeah. I shot some stuff, and I just haven't been able to get around to it. There's a little bit more that I want to shoot for the suspension video, and actually, there's maybe a couple of more changes I might make in the near term, and so I'm kind of holding off on that video to see if I tackle a couple of other things, and then I can wrap it all into one video. But I'm definitely going to be talking about the suspension upgrades. Longest amount of time I spent out in the forest on adventure. Well, that's the trip that I was just on with Jason. I left Eugene on a Monday and a Monday afternoon, and I got back to Eugene the following Monday evening. So that was a week. That was the longest ever trip. Callahan moving to Washington this month, and also have a Subaru. Best places to off-road or camp. Well, I'm not familiar with Washington, but you know, any place. I mean, it's always for me. It's always just a question of looking for some national forest to get up into, and then you've got a network of roads to explore. You can camp where you want to camp, and yeah, look for areas of national forest. There's a lot of it in Washington. I imagine there's probably, I'm not super familiar with Washington, but in eastern Washington, I imagine there's a lot of BLM land as well, which is also, fair game for exploring and camping. Lifted Tribecas. Yeah, Tribecas are few and far between. Eris Pope, what were you and Primal sipping on the last episode? I think I answered that. We were both drinking our own separate whiskeys. Ganbat, have you considered installing a snorkel? Oh, yes, absolutely. After the Eastern Oregon trip in June, when I went through that river, that was, at that point, I was like, okay, snorkel is going to happen. I haven't had a chance to pull it together yet, and it's not a super, super urgent high priority because I don't run into that kind of thing very often. That's pretty rare in Oregon. But there, when you get out into the back country, the far back country of Oregon, there's more places where there's no bridges, and I definitely want to explore more of that kind of territory. And a snorkel, yeah, that is definitely on the list. Brad Calendar, what is the best time of year in Oregon? All year long. Um, I'm happy out there in the winter, spring, fall. I'm not super fond of summer. Actually, summer is probably my least favorite time to be out exploring because there's a lot of people out and there's bugs and you can't have campfires. Um, so I would say fall, winter, spring. How much fun was it to hang out with Primal Outdoors? It was fun. Jason's a fun guy. He's funny, and we get along well. It's fine. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. It was a good time. Does the Forester handle any different on the road with tires and lift? Um, you know, Probably, but it's been such a gradual process that I I would have to drive a stock Forester that's just like mine on stock tires to really feel the difference. Um, it's definitely less zippy than it was when I bought it, when it was, you know, pretty much basically stock. Not that it's not a fast car, it's not a powerful car. It's never been really zippy or sporty, but it was zippier and sportier then than it is now. Um, but the the slight handling loss that I've seen from lifting it and being on taller tires, um, you know, that to me feels like a minor sacrifice for the additional capability when I'm on the trail, where the performance really matters to me. I don't do a ton of driving otherwise, and so it doesn't really matter. The Forester spends the bulk of its hours on the trail, and so that's the highest priority for me. Do other YouTubers contact you? Is there a lot of other communication with other YouTubers? Um, yeah, I mean, I've definitely sort of become online friends with a number of YouTubers, and obviously I've ended up meeting up with a number of them as well. John DZ Adventuring in California, Edward Shin, Jason obviously Primal Outdoors. I managed to meet up briefly with Coyote Works, and we may meet up again in the coming months. Um, Matt Cook, who actually lives here in Eugene, he has a great channel doing all kinds of Oregon stuff. He and I occasionally meet up and have a beer and chat, and one of these days we'll get out together, right, Matt? So yeah, and there's when you meet up with other YouTubers, I mean, it's nice because you got all kinds of things that you can talk about and commiserate on. So how do you plan when going on trails you've never been? Do you just go by yourself on new trails? How do you plan your trips if you go alone? Yeah, so I don't hesitate to go places I've never been before by myself. I mean, I've done a lot of that, and it's actually one of my favorite ways to get out there is to be by myself. And you know, it's I mean, I'm basically going up national forest roads, and they're roads. You know, they're sometimes they get a little bit rough, and if they get too rough, you know, you stop and turn around and find a different route. But ultimately, I found that there's not a lot to fear out there. You know, as long as you don't push into something that is beyond what you know you can do. Um, I don't know. It I don't feel I don't feel nervous out there being out there by myself. You know, I if I'm going to go out to a place I've never been, you know, I scout on satellite pictures and maps. I try and figure out where I'm going to go, what looks interesting, and I look at what roads seem interesting and seem like they're going to get me through. And then I just get out there and start poking up them, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes I see something that I didn't realize that was there when I was looking at satellite pictures, especially in treed areas. Can't always see all of the trails that are out there, and you know, I'll just randomly poke up something that I discover, and you know, it's been okay. And I mean, I think the big thing is having a certain amount of preparedness, having some recovery, self recovery equipment with you. So traction boards, a shovel. I mean, those first and foremost. Um, you know, and having adequate tires to begin with, that makes a difference also. Um, but then simply stopping and turning around and not pushing forward when you're not sure that you can do it. And then the flip side of that, I will say, is that when I am out with people, um, and I get into stuff that I'm not sure I can do, I try to push and see, can I actually drive this thing? Because if I can't and I get into trouble, you know, I've got a buddy with a truck right there who can help me. You know, absolute worst case scenario, I've got to ride back to civilization. So so two things I would say. One is learning what your vehicle is capable of when you are with other people, and two, being prepared when you do go out by yourself, and three, just don't push it. Don't push it. you know, I am some of the stuff you've seen me tackle in my videos. I would never dream of doing if I was by myself, and I only did it because I knew that if I got into real trouble, there was someone right there to help me. So, okay, let's see what else we got here. We've been at it for, it's been an hour and a half. We're probably gonna have to wrap this up soon. Um, what percent of your viewers do you think have never gone overlanding? No idea, but doesn't matter, if they're watching because they just enjoy it or they want to live vicariously. I definitely have viewers who have never done it and maybe don't have the ability to do it for either financial or health or living someplace where it's simply not possible. There's places where there's just not public lands and places to go like we that are just at your doorstep like they are here in the West. Um, and those who haven't gone overlanding, and maybe find themselves inspired to otherwise, that's great too. Um, Dan Von Ulrich, hi. I'm sure your more long epic trips are fun, but I started watching your channel because all your smaller, less epic trips were more inspiring to me. Yeah, and that was really what I it was my initial vision was to not be doing major overland trips. Was to just see ways that getting out into the wilderness could be accessible for people who couldn't afford to take week long or 2 week long trips. And I still really love doing that. And I still do. I mean, what I did 2 week long trips in 2020, and the rest of it was no more than 2 or 3 nights, just weekends. I'm going out on an overnighter this weekend, just one night, and end of December maybe a 3 night trip. So that's still the probably the bulk of what I'll be doing. The thing is, in order to get to some of the really cool places that are a long ways away, it just takes more time, and it's just not feasible as a weekend. I mean, to go to the deepest southeastern corner of Oregon on a weekend is not worth it. You spend all day driving to get there. You spend another entire day driving to get home. It's not worth it. And so the only way that I can get to those far places, right, that's worth it to me to get to those distant places is to take a full week or more. Ideally more. I would like to even do more because to get even further out of state, even a week starts to feel cramped. So okay, I'm gonna scroll down here real quick, but I think we're gonna wrap this up pretty soon. Okay. Zach, soft roading the West meetup. Yeah, actually, I wanted to do that this year, but COVID-19. We'll have to see what happens. If things get eased up a little bit because there's a vaccine and it's just less dangerous, then I would really, really love to get some kind of a meetup together. Hey, mean one, late to the party, but glad you stopped by. 327 Chev. Hello from New Zealand. You have a Chevy with a 327? My first car was a 1964 Chevrolet Chevelle Malibu. It had a 283. That was before they put the no, it was the model that didn't have the 327. It was a 283, but I know what a 327 is. Okay, quick look at what else is left here. What air compressor? It's a Viair 88, Viair 88P, I think it's called. P88, 88P. I've had it for 3.5 years and still going strong. Countless air ups. If you're, I don't know, if you're driving a Toyota with bigger tires, you may want like the 300 or something that's a little bit higher capacity than the 88. For my little tires, it's fine. Heard you mention a business. I do graphic design, and graphic design is the main bulk of my business, and I do some work in the stock photography industry. Okay, strangest thing that you've ever seen or experienced out there. If I did see Sasquatch, would I actually tell you about it? Um, yes, I would. No, strangest thing. I don't know. Exploring close to town, I've stumbled into some really sketchy situations. That's why these days I mostly like to just push further out into the wilderness. You know, if you're within 30, 45 minutes of town, that's like within reach of the people who are up to no good. And I've seen them. um, I try to avoid those situations. I've had people like visibly brandishing guns to make sure that I didn't stop in their campsite or whatever. So yeah. Okay, one last quick little scan here, and then I think we'll shut this down. Um, okay, what kind of wildlife do you run into? Um, you know, very little. I've seen two cougars very quickly. I've seen one bear, um, and never seen a rattlesnake. I haven't really seen anything. There's no amount of wildlife. Elk, deer, antelope out in eastern Oregon. Well, they're pronghorn. They're technically not antelope, but they get called antelope. But I think that wildlife becomes problematic for camping when you're camping in places where people are all the time, campgrounds, places where, like go to Yosemite National Park, there's people there all the time, and the bears know there's people and there's treats. The places that I go, I could camp someplace where someone hasn't camped for a month or 2 months or a year even. Um, and so the wildlife doesn't have the opportunity to get accustomed to people and food, and and they also don't have the opportunity to just simply get accustomed to seeing people. So, the one time I saw a bear, that thing was scared. All it wanted to do was get away from me. The times that I've seen cougar, all they wanted to do was get away from me. They're scared of people, and they want nothing to do with you. And so I think when you're really out in the wilderness, I feel like I have no concerns about wildlife at all. My really two-legged predators is my only concern out there, not animals. Okay, all right. I think we're gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna go and have some dinner. Thank you all for coming out and joining us here. This was fun. I enjoyed it. I think I'll probably do another one at some point. Um, And if there's questions that I didn't get to, you could put them in the comment section below. If you asked a question in the chat and I didn't get to it, I will try and go back and answer some additional questions. Also, those of you who did post questions on the community page post, I didn't. I thought I might be able to loop back around to some of those, and there were more than enough questions here as it was. So I will go back and answer those questions as well. So thank you all for for joining me here, and thanks for watching and supporting the channel. Really appreciate that you all sort of coming along for the ride. Maybe I can take my glasses off for the end there. And I'm going to keep doing this and hope to keep doing more and more of it. So thank you all for joining me, and stay tuned Saturday for the next episode of the epic adventure across the Oregon backcountry. See y'all later. If I can figure out how to stop the live stream.